Today we're talking about the challenges that come with tracing genealogies back to ancient European roots. Hello folks, Randy Turpin here. Up until now, most of my study has been on the Turpins in America, but we've come to the point where we've got to reach across the Atlantic Ocean to Europe. You begin the story somewhere over there. Well, my preference is really to start in the Middle East, where all of civilization began. And we may get into that next week or in the next episode. I want to talk a little bit about the challenges that do come with tracing family histories back into ancient roots, especially European roots. I'm going to list a few things that are probably common to anybody that's trying to do this. Number one, access to European libraries and databases may be limited for a lot of American researchers. American researchers can't easily just go to Europe. You can't just jump in a car and go to Europe. You got to fly there. You've got to take a boat there. It's not easily done, and not everything's available on the internet, unfortunately. Maybe someday it will be, but not everything is. However, Ancestry.com does have a membership that includes international databases, so that may be the next step to try as we face this challenge of access to European libraries and databases. The second challenge is this. Prior to the year 1066 AD, people did not have surnames. They didn't have last names. Before the Norman conquest of Britain, people did not have hereditary surnames. They were just known by a personal name or a nickname. After 1066, after William the Conqueror conquered England, Norman barons, they introduced surnames into England, and that practice gradually spread, and by 1400, most English families and a good number of those from lowland Scotland had adopted the use of hereditary surnames. So the problem we face is this: without a surname to follow, linking one generation back to a preceding generation can really become difficult, especially without a surname to follow. The third challenge of tracing European ancestry is this, that researchers often consider tales like stories, oral traditions, and all of that. A lot of those stories are considered myth. They're considered as myths without historic merit if it can't be verified by other forms of documentation. Well, that's really kind of unfortunate, because even far-fetched fables and tales and myths may have a kernel of truth based on historic fact. Now, I'm not going to take every myth at face value, but I'm going to be looking at some of these tales and stories to see if there might be a kernel of truth with some of them that can be verified in history. So I'm not a person that's likely to just dismiss an oral story regarding the family line in England, Scandinavia, Europe, Middle East. We'll see how this goes. The fourth challenge is this, that secular researchers, the word secular means basically you're not including God or religion in the picture, okay? But the problem is this, the challenge is this, that secular researchers regard biblical connections as dubious. They do not consider the Bible as a legitimate historic source. I mean, there are some family lines that can actually be traced back to Bible characters. Well, simply because it is a Bible character, a lot of researchers are saying, well, you can't count on that. That's not historic. That's religious. Again, that's unfortunate. But there is another reason that some researchers are suspicious of genealogies connecting with a Bible character, and there is actually some legitimacy to this concern. As Europe became increasingly Christianized, there was a subtle pressure on families in Europe to distance themselves from pagan roots and to identify with something of more of a Judeo-Christian biblical heritage. So that factor is something that has to be considered, and in some cases it may have led to some genealogies being fabricated, made up. That is just something we'll have to discern, okay, and sort through. Another challenge, and this is the fifth and final one, in some cases, these ancient European genealogies and histories are very difficult, if not impossible, to verify, especially if the person or family group had no significant standing in the community or in history. In other words, there'd be no real reason historically, they weren't regarded as a public profile person. Well, those individuals, you're not likely to find as much documentation on their life or their stories. So, well, as we try to identify our ancient European ancestry, we're likely to hit a point where we can go no further back in time to a preceding generation. At some point, we're going to reach a dead end with a specific Turpin or a specific person named Thorfinn or someone with a derivative of that name. And when that happens, and I can almost guarantee you it's going to happen, when we hit that dead end does not have to be a dead end. What am I talking about? What I mean is this. We may not be able to identify that person's parent, whoever that person at our dead end is. We may not be able to identify their parents, but hopefully we could still identify their people group, their ethnic group or their tribal group or whatever. And if we can do that, if we could identify their people group, then what we're going to do is backtrack the migration pattern of that people group to see where it leads back in time. All right? My ultimate objective here is to connect back to one of Japheth's sons. Japheth is regarded as the father of Europeans. So all of this is really setting us up for what I hope to be our next episode. There's a good possibility that our next episode will start at the very beginning of the Turpin saga, with the very first generation. At least that's what I'm hoping. I've been working on that story for several weeks now. It's just not quite ready today to release. But let's see how this goes. But for now, that's all for now. All right. See you later.